Hello there, everybody. Welcome to a very special stream today. I was given a preview for a magazine that I've been kind of looking forward to. Let's just some of this stuff. Actually, can I drop some of this? Thought about actually any of this other stuff. And there we go. Okay. So let's kind of go over some of this stuff here. This is my first time opening. I did scroll one or two pages just to find the contents. And there was something I was actually interested in, looking forward to reading. But look how nice this art is. Apparently, there's been a lot less, well, there is a lot less art in this from the other issues because there was an issue with people claiming, oh, it's AI, people being jerks about, different things, which is very unfortunate. But, further ado, Tales from the Tavern by Elven Made In. These are the following contributors, right? Thank you to them. Ko-Fi supporters, Jack Chronicler of the Northlands. Let's see here. Special thanks. As the final pages of Tales from the Tavern turn, I find myself overwhelmed with gratitude for every single soul who has been part of this beautiful, unexpected journey. To every reader who picked up issue 1, who shared a kind word, who waited for the next issue, and who made it all the way here to issue 3. Thank you. Without you, none of this would have ever existed. That we reached a third issue at all is living proof of how extraordinary, generous, and passionate our little community truly is. You didn't just read a magazine, you breathed life into it. This publication was only possible because of the giants who first dreamed these worlds into being. We owe everything to Gary Gygax and Dave Anderson, whose creation of Dungeons and Dragons gave birth to an entire hobby and opened the door to infinite adventures. We also stand in awe of Sandy Peterson, whose Call of Cthulhu brought cosmic horror and unforgettable dread to our tables, along with the many brilliant creators who kept the flame burning bright and expanded what tabletop role play could be. We must never forget the storytellers whose words first lit the fire in our hearts. J.R.R. Tolkien, Glenn Cook, Ed Greenwood, Robert E. Howard, and all the other masters whose tales of wonder, courage, and darkness gave us the raw material for our own adventures. These creators gave us realms where we could lose ourselves completely. Pure, magical journeys untouched by the noise and divisions of the modern world. It is important now more than ever that we remember their gifts with deep respect. They are the true giants of our hobby. Their work deserves to be honored, protected, and passed on with the same love and care they poured into it. By staying true to the spirit in which these worlds were born, we keep the magic alive for everyone who comes after us. To my family, thank you for loving me through every late night, every doubt, and every moment I disappeared into these pages. Your patience, your quiet encouragement, and your belief in me have been far more than I have ever deserved. You're the steady light that made this whole adventure possible. As we close this final issue, I want to leave you with this. Stories end, but every ending is the beginning of something new. The dice will keep rolling. The tavern doors will always be open somewhere. The magic we shared here will live on. in your games, in your stories, in the hearts of everyone who still believes in wonder. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for walking this road with me. With endless gratitude and warmest wishes. Keybauer, Elvin Made In. So here's some of the table of context I was just kind of like looking through. Also, beautiful special thanks. I can't, yeah. Is this interview right here with the Ed Greenwood. And if you are not familiar, if I remember right, Ed Greenwood is the creator of the Forgotten Realms, which is the most popular realm in D&D. So if you've ever played Baldur's Gate, that's the place where that whole story takes place. And I saw that, I was like, oh man, I should stop. We should save the rest of this for stream. But let's see what else we got. Unwritten story, why game masters are not storytellers. Also, I think kind of want to look into that too, because people make the mistake of well, you can tell, stories and this and that. Why don't you just write? It's like, dog, those are different. These are different skill sets. Yeah, they kind of cross through, but skill sets are very different. Let's see what else we got. Elven Irish Cream. Recipe from Elven Tavern. That might be neat, but we won't go extensively over it. I like to make drinks myself, so I kind of need to go over. There's a short story. Let's see here. Turning inspiration into distinct from concept to class, turning inspiration into distinct TTRPG mechanics. Always split the party. The golden apple crumble cake. Ooh. Interesting. So yeah, apparently this has a lot of different things, right? Like, this is an interview with Ed Greenwood, which that's still crazy to me. Good for them that they got that interview. But it also has like little recipes. I don't know. I don't know if this is like a commentary. This is just a short story. The Ellen Dewdrop recipe. So this is more recipes, more commentary. Interview with Sandy Peterson. Isn't that the Cthulhu person who made Cthulhu, right? Isn't that what they said? Let's look it up, chat. Let's look it up. Let's see here. Sandy Peterson? Son? Where'd it go? Peterson. Oh, it's not a girl. I'm an idiot. Rune Quest. No. It's a girl. Sandy Peterson is an American game designer. He worked at Chaosium, contributed to Rune Quest. Oh, neat. Feature to horror role-playing game. Yeah, that is the Call of Cthulhu. Apparently it's a Call of Cthulhu guy. My bad. Misgendering this person. Let's see here. You know what? I had this set up. Why didn't I? Let's turn on some music here. just a little bit. There we go. Maybe that's a little bit better. We won't. Maybe we should go over the crossword. Maybe we'll go over the crossword just a little bit here too. Daniel Fox, Dark Foundries, Foundations of New Heroes Without Horrors. Man, there's just so much. This is crazy, and this is somebody that I follow on Twitter, and they're like, oh yeah, I just made all of this, like with a bunch of people. The Elven made it. Give them a follow on Twitter, please. Let me see here. That's them on Twitter. Please give them a follow. And there's even more. This is huge. Fantasy's sacred ground, keeping fantasy free from the modern chaos. Might want to go over this too a little bit, because there is a problem. I just want to know what they say about that. Races of the Eternal Empire, Oriental races for castles and crusaders. Neat. Very neat. Moon Consort of the Inner Palace, Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the answers. We're not going to look at the answers, are we, chat? We're not going to look at them. But let's start with the thing that I've been most excited about. Mr. Ed Greenwood. Yeah, the man who built the Forgotten Realms. Look at that. That's a face. That's a face you remember. That is definitely a guy who plays D&D. Actually, isn't he actually Elminster? Let's see here. Ed Greenwood. Yeah, Ed Greenwood is a Canadian fantasy writer and the creator of Forgotten Realms. He began writing articles about the Forgotten Realms for Dragon magazine beginning in 1979. Dang, that's like what? They just built the car or something, right? Like maybe electricity finally started coming around, something like that. And subsequently sold the rights to the setting to TSR, to the creators of Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game in 1986. Let's see. Yeah, I think he is. Let me see here. Oh, because it says here in the Google, like, I don't know, Mr. Met. I think he is, but doesn't say. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. My bad. So, today we're privileged to converse with Ed Greenwood, the legendary creator of the Forgotten Realms, a vast, intricate fantasy world that has enchanted gamers, readers, and storytellers for decades. Born from childhood tales in the mid-1960s, long before Dungeons & Dragons emerged, the realms have evolved into a cornerstone of the D&D universe, inspiring novels, games, and endless adventure. Doesn't Drizzt series, doesn't that come from the Forgotten Realms also? Great series. I've only read several. I've only read like the first like 5 books. 3 or 5 books. And it just goes on and on and on. Great storytelling. Ed's boundless imagination and prolific writing continue to shape fantasy landscapes. In this interview for Tales, in this interview for Tales from the Tavern magazine, oh my god, we'll delve into the origins, evolutions, and enduring legacy of his creations. Elven Made In. Many believe the Forgotten Realms were created specifically for Dungeons and Dragons, but the truth is that your world predates D&D by nearly a decade, originating in your childhood stories from 1965. Can you describe what the realms what the realms looked like back then, and how different it was from the version we know today? So apparently, oh wow, this guy did it when he was a kid. He was coming up with this stuff when he was a kid. Ed Greenwood. The realms back then geographically looked very much like the published realms of today, except that my original moonshades were an archipelago of many small islands, like Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea. The real worlds had brides she drew inspiration from. The Great Ice Sea covered the area now known as Icewind Dale. Another glacier covered the area later revealed as Vaasa and Damara. All across Toril, there were no close real-world analogs. So there was no Mastika and no Kara-Tur. There were landmasses there, but not with those names and echoes of real-world culture. No Arabian Nights or Al-Qadim areas. Kalimshan and Anarak were on my maps as largely desert lands, but not with the pashas and so on. I had satraps and the viziers. I believe drawing too close real-world parallels shatter the suspense of disbelief and borrows needless cultural appropriation and denigration problems. Okay, yeah, that is true. People start picking and choosing from different world or different cultures, and it just starts breaking down. And you know, it just starts becoming a caricature and something bad. So a lot of the times, so try not to draw too much, quote unquote, inspiration when you are making your worlds and stuff, because then you know people start doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and then like nowadays it gets out, it's like, oh, they're cultural appropriation, and becomes a whole woke thing. So no, that makes sense. I mean, of course it makes sense. Ed Greenwood. Let's see here. Yeah. So, Elven Made In. What inspired the initial spark for the Forgotten Realms as a setting for your stories? Were there particular books, myths, or personal experiences that shaped its early foundations? I was inspired by the fantasy and pulp tales in my father's den. My mother died when I was 6. Oh man, that's rough. And I craved escape into happier worlds. Those stories on my father's shelves grabbed me. From the Fritz Leiber Pfafferd and the Grey Mouser tales, I took the notion of telling episodic, self-contained adventures in the lives of a vagabond anti-heroes. With the world setting always there in the background and getting detailed in tiny additions within the tales I was writing, my original over-the-shoulder point of view main character in my stories, which I began writing as a 6-year-old, oh my god, was Mert the Moneylender, a fat, wheezing old trickster who was a combination of Shakespeare's Falstaff, The traitor Nicholas Van Ringe from Paul Anderson's Polis Tactic League of Stories, and Guy Galprick's drunken Scottish freighter engineer Glenn Cannon, the long-running series in the magazines of the day. Whew, those are some words. Actually, I think these might be what you call it, misspelling, truthfully. So this is definitely just like a beta, right? The final might not be, well, the final isn't out yet, so you know, it happens. I wouldn't call it a rough draft. It's definitely not a rough draft, but still some editing to be done, I think. Right? Something like that. But I digress. EMI, Elven Maiden. Key locations like Cormyr, Evermeet, and Waterdeep have become iconic in the realms. What real-world or fantastical inspirations led to their creation, and how did you envision their roles in their world? Cormyr was my vision of what a kingdom would be like if King Arthur, with his Knights of the Round Table, had gotten the chance to rule a kingdom for generations, but kept in line by powerful wizards on the side of law and order, if not always on the side of good. I wanted to explore what life would be like in a land over-endowed with fractious nobles, and with two cities that had rebellious tendencies, Arabelle and Marsember, but overall peace and therefore prosperity, with a constant threat of being bought up farm by farm and city building by wealthier land next door, Sembia. Evermeet was my idea of Tolkien's Rivendell, but a larger, quote-unquote, hidden land where the elves of the realms kept their wider world at bay. My elves are haughty and noble, but they have always also been involved in bitter feuds with each other, between sorts of elves and between elven families. They share a love of beautiful sylvan growth, so Evermeet is a leafy green paradise. Let me double check something. Okay. Waterdeep is the olden times of Rome, Paris, or London of the realms, a sovereign, tolerant crossroad trading city. And although there were a few Lankmar and later Ankh-Morpork nods in its design, it's most rooted in my idea of what medieval London might have been if magic worked and a wizard, Agorian in elder days, and Kelbin more recently, kept order. The major real-world London inspiration was the guilds and now vanished gentlemen's clubs. There were gentlemen's clubs in this world? I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. EMI. How did TSR first approach you about acquiring the Forgotten Realms for D&D? And what were your initial thoughts in sharing your personal creation with a larger audience? Looking back, do you have any regrets about giving away your world? Jeff Grubb, a senior staff designer who read every issue of The Dragon, as Dragon Magazine was then known, had drafted an internal white paper proposing a unified game world, the second edition of D&D that wasn't Greyhawk, Gary Gygax as well, and wasn't Kryn, or built around one big epic story. His reward for championing this idea was to find a candidate world. So as he'd read many passing references to the realms in my dragon articles, he got my contact information from Kim Mohan at the Dragon. I was a contributing editor at the magazine, and cold called me at my public library workplace. Oh wow, just straight up called his work to find out. Jeff asked me if I had a complete detailed world at home or if I made it up as I went along. The answer to both questions was and is yes. Straight up yes. I was delighted to share my creation with the wider world, mainly because when I made colored maps of the realms, you could see my pencil crayon strokes. My pencil crayon strokes in all the oceans, and I was hoping for more beautiful maps. My only regret is that I didn't retain a tiny bit more creative control, so I could have prevented those real-world, too close analogs I mentioned earlier. Copying a real-world culture or its Hollywood version is easier for artists, but it borrows a host of design troubles and cuts down on new, creative, different world details. Yeah, because you start changing things, you start getting stuck in the idea of that culture that you're borrowing from. Okay, makes sense. EMI. Your early contributions to Dragon Magazine, such as articles detailing the realm's lore, helped introduce the setting to fans. What was your experience like writing those pieces, and how did they influence the development of the published campaign setting? I started writing for the Dragon to fix some problems. Incomplete rules, mismatched between roles, and counter sheet on numbers of armies. Jesus, sounds crazy. With yeah, with the with the bleh, with the published Divine Right board game, and to feel better morally about throwing my creations, spells, monsters, and magic items at my players in the Home Realms campaign. In those days, everyone who could, players and DMs, read Dragon, but my players didn't bring stacks of the magazine to our gaming table, so they had to try to remember what they'd read, which I thought simulated what their characters knew or overheard in taverns in the realms. I was named a contributing, later creative editor of the magazine because Kim Mohan, who began as a journalist, not a gamer, was impressed by my Gates articles published in issue number 37 of the Dragon, because it had footnotes. As magazines are assembled in 8-page signature depending on how many advertisements are being run that month. Dragon could expand or shrink, and Kim really needed I assume, someone who could write finished text to order in a hurry to match this theme of that piece of art he already had on hand. I could, so I got a lot of work. Alongside the themes he asked for, I wrote lore pieces about the realms on topic wanted to explore, and in that way managed to get a lot of non-location specific realms lore into print. When TSR bought the realms, they asked for more and more about characters, places, and things they'd already read about in Dragon. So, the articles influence and direction of the published realms in that way. Okay, it's kind of neat. Uh-oh. Oh my gosh, was this not playing the whole time? My bad, everybody. Okay. EMI. As you took on a role at TSR, you wrote some of the most iconic novels in the realms, including the Spellfire Saga, Elminster series, the Cormyr Saga, which is my personal favorite and helped me through one of the darkest times of my life, for which I'm extremely grateful, and books in the Harper series. What drew you to these stories and characters? I was never on staff at either TSR or Wizards. I was always a freelancer. Oh wow. And my Realms novels were works for hire. The publisher can literally change every word if they want to. That's funny. Spellfire, just the first book, was originally written as a trilogy. They cut down to one book in-house. So most of my published Realms novels, with the exception of the Knights of Myth-Draenor trilogy, and the last two books, Spellstorm and Deathmax, were almost assignments. What I was going to cover in a given book was discussed and agreed upon beforehand, and then I set to work at top speed to write the tale. Elminster, A Making of a Mage, was written in it was written in 16 days. 8 two-day weekends. Both of my Double Diamond Triangle books were written in half a day each, so I literally didn't have time for convoluted plots, and at the same time was directly ordered to include lots of fighting. What I tried to do for me was to show love and give even the bad guys their moments of sympathy and explanation and reflection. They had life aims and dreams and families at home. And also to include strong female characters who were central to the story. Not Frazetta Conan-like babes wrapped around the man's ankles. I wanted to show everybody doing things for the best, even if they were wrong and what they did was terrible. They didn't think so. At the time, I wanted to know. They didn't think so at the time. Okay. I wanted the lives of the characters to seem real, so full of mistakes and meanderings and sarcasm and foolishness among the heroics. Yeah. Okay. So he actually just wrote these books in 16 days. That is bonkers. What was that, 8 weeks? I haven't read any of these books. Maybe I should read these books. 16 days, 8 two-day weekends. So he was like working and then wrote these on his spare time? Some of the like most inspirational stories. What a Chad. EMI. During your time writing for TSR, how much did their vision for the Forgotten Realms differ from your original concepts? Were there elements you had to adapt or compromise on to fit the company's direction? Ed Greenwood. TSR controlled the published realms, not me. So when something was put into print and not presented as the views or words of an unreliable narrator, I always kept Elminster or Volo as my mouthpieces, reminding the reader that what they read might be wrong, so a DM could change things without arguments around the gaming table. It was canon from that instant on. Let me see here. What did I just read? Let's see here. I always kept. Okay, so he uses Elminster and Volo to go, well, you know, I heard that it's actually like this, or I heard it's something like that. Which is actually probably what it most likely is. Interesting. Oh wow. So the goofiness from Volo might actually be canon, more canon than what is that's because it's coming from Ed Greenwood as like a mouthpiece. Okay. Where was I? I always miss mouthpiece. Reminding the reader that could be reminding the reader that what they read might be wrong. So a DM could change things without argument around the gaming table. Let's see. It was canon from that instant on. Whatever was published, I shifted to accept as what was reality, on the ground in the realms. When I embraced real-world cultures or Hollywood versions, I didn't contradict them, but I leapt in to write little details of the world that were different than real-world history, to make the realms different from our Earth in tiny ways. I would never have put the Dalai Lama into the realms. Oh my god, that's right. Or given it Mongol, Ahem, Tuigan, Horde. But when those things appeared, I tried to work with them to make everything fit into a huge, endlessly unfolded tapestry. I still work on the realms every day of my life, creating new details, large and small, trying to leave the lore creations by others into big coherent pieces. Hold on. And trying to leave the lore created by others into a big coherent piece. So I've always had to adapt and compromise. But by staying involved in the realms behind the scenes and out front stage, I've managed to keep influencing the realms and keep putting my original lore and new lore into it for everyone to use. I have always worked with game design and fiction writers behind the scenes, not to control what they're writing, but to make it fit the realms. Okay. TSR expanded Faerun into a large world of Toro by merging it with regions like Karatur, Sakhara, and Mastika. How much input did you provide in this transformation? And what were your feelings about seeing your world grow in ways beyond your initial design? Ed Greenwood. As I said earlier, I'm no fan of too close real-world analogs, and Karatur and Mastika were those. Sakhara is a Hollywood version of the real world, borrowing, and I wouldn't have done that either. I had no input into Karatur and Mastika. Mastika or Mastika? It was Mastika. At all until after the fact, and worked with Jeff Grubb on Al-Qadim by deciding what spells I'd devise for my Anarak Realms product, which had been forced into real proximity by what Troy Danning had already written in his Harper's novel, The Parched Sea, could go into Al-Qadim. Let's see here. Anarak Realms product. Okay. I have nothing at all against my world growing beyond the original design, though I have most of Lyricon, aka Return Amir, and other continents lightly designed in outline, and some elements of Round Space too, as I was the first freelancers to work with Jeff on Spelljammer. Oh, neat. It's only the too close to real world stuff I object to, because it robs us of creative new setting lore and can offend some real world folks needlessly. Facts. The release of the legendary video game Baldur's Gate marked the breakthrough for the realms, bringing it to a wider audience. How did you view its impact then? And what was it like seeing your world adapted into an interactive medium? I currently have a lot of fun playing in live stage shows and filmed live plays with some of the Boulder Gates 3 voice actors. Oh, that's cool. Good for them. They were able to play with Ed Greenwood. I wonder if I can find any of these on YouTube. Maybe that's something we could do. Kind of like go over, just react, watch um, some of those videos. I wonder if that's legal. I'll think about it. I did some minor design work on the first two Baldur's Gate game, creating the title books, creating the titles of books characters can come across in libraries. Oh, okay. For instance, in the real world, I've always worked in public libraries for over 50 years now. And I'm going to assume that you're asking here about Baldur's Gate 3, which I am overjoyed about. In past computer games, when your character met someone, it was either to kill them or take their stuff, or to negotiate or quiz them to get information you needed to progress in the game. BG3 gives you so much more. You can romance characters, become their friends, choose to adventure with them or not, shift your allegiances as the game advances, and so on. This entire dimension of getting along with other beings in the world as opposed to just using or eliminating them was added. And as with only few rare details, Volo and Elminster should not be killable, as they are both weave anchors whom Mr. and Azuth should step in to rescue. And Gale should not be able to progress as far as he can without Mistra's blessing. Recognize my realms in the game. They got it right. So I can really enjoy the game. I live in a rural area with slow internet that often just dies for long periods, so I can't even run the game on my computer. But I am currently doing a streamed playthrough with my friend and tech guru, Ivan. So he plays as I comment and advise, so I get to hang out and play with someone, not alone. Even better. Look at this dude. He's just... he is a D&D player. He is a D&D maker. What a Chad. EMI, was Baldur's Gate ultimately a blessing or a curse for the Forgotten Realms? On one hand, it skyrocketed its popularity and arguably made it a staple of D&D, but on the other, it seemed to shrink the focus of the Sword Coast, with places like Cormyr, Evermeet, and even Waterdeep fading from prominence, while regions like Neverwinter, Icewind Dale, and the Underdark dominated perceptions. The Sword Coast's focus was a Wizards of the Coast Hasbro decision before BG3 was ever released, because the rest of the realms is easier for a third-party license to use if there's no current canon detail they have to match. I agree that this focus is a bad thing because we all deserve all realms. Because we all deserve all of the realms, not just one corner of it. The Baldur's Gate 3 game is not to blame. I mean, it's called Baldur's Gate, so you know. It needs to focus on, well, it needs to get to that. No, ew, bot. Gross. Oh well, at least they count towards the, chatting. It is what it is. EMI, in recent years, there's been a push to portray Drow as not inherently evil, with more emphasis on good aligned Drow societies. How do you see this trend affecting the lore, and could it diminish the impact of characters like Drizzt, whose arc is built on overcoming his origins and the world's prejudices, similar to figures like Hellboy, who triumphed over their evil heritage? I think the shift offers a fascinating "you are there as the world changes before your eyes" moment. When crafting the first Drow the Underdark game book, titles seem to have a habit of getting reused. I was asked to create a good drow deity and came up with Elestray. And from the moment I did, a lot of gamers seemed very interested in her. Change is one constant in the real world, and fictitious worlds change and seem more real. I think that's proving to be the case with the realms. Undeniably, Dritz has more impact when he stood alone against most of his race, and therefore stood out in contrast. But we're seeing tales of his descendants now. The world moves on. In 1990, he wrote a book introducing the drow goddess Elestray. What was the initial idea behind her creation? Was she always intended to be a good aligned deity? And how would you compare her personality and role to that of her mother, Lolth? Elestray, not the name of the specifics of her as female and as the Dark Dancer. Not the name or the specific, okay. Was an editorial assignment. Create a good drow deity for good drow to follow. And make that deity have impact worshippers in the realms above, the surface world. Not just the realms below, the Underdark. She was always intended to be good aligned and her very existence helps. In design terms, how Lolth can be so evil and so powerful and yet fail to achieve much of anything or get anywhere except in drow cities she already dominates. If Lolth can thwart Corellon and the other elven deities, why isn't she already ruling the world? Or at least the Underdark and or the elven world? The existence of Varun and Elestray helps to explain that, and more importantly, increases possibilities for play at your gaming table and many others. It's a time of chaos and conflict. The actions of your player characters may very much matter. And that, as designers, is what we're always trying to do. During TSR's financial difficulties in the 1990s, we offered to continue writing Forgotten Realms books for free to help keep the line alive. Why do you think this suggestion was rejected, and how did that moment affect your relationship with the company? I have no idea as to why it was rejected. Possibly because someone saw it as losing control over me, or the books I produced. But that's sheer speculation on my part. As TSR began to run down communications, except on a personal level, between me and close friends at the company I'd been working with, faded away. So communications started to fade away. And that was a change in the relationship, and the reason why I have no idea about the rejection too. But I've never worked on Realms for money. Could have made much more doing many other things. I work on the Realms because I wanted to. Because I love the setting and I love sharing it. I would write Realms novels for free right now if they'd let me. The problem is I'd need to find some other way of getting income as I get old and health problems accumulate and the need for funds with it. The time I'd spend on Realms novels would take away time from getting paid for doing something else. Such is the reality of time. EMI, when Wizards of the Coast acquired D&D and asked you to continue writing for the Realms, how did the experience differ from your time with TSR? Were there changes in creative freedom? There were a gentleman's agreement in place, unwritten but understood by everyone involved, over the protocol using Realms characters. So different writers wouldn't use the same characters in contradictory ways, such as a writer killing her off while writer B married her off and made her a ruler. And places, I write bucolic rest scenes in a village, but you write about a war that's already destroyed the village. That simply vanished overnight because the new folks didn't know about them. Then there were the 100-year 4E time jump and the spell plague, which harmed the very strength of the setting. a rich tapestry without interruptions, and a cast of NPCs we'd built up that suddenly died of old age overnight without their tales getting told. Oof, that's right. Fourth edition was crazy. Other than that, there were summits over major series and changes, such as the Sundering, which were golden moments of getting together and talking plot elements face to face. That I'll always cherish. Your last published novel in the realms was Death Mask in 2016. Will we see more books set in Faerun from your future, or are there any ongoing projects you'd like to hint at? I'm working on a collaboration with Reese York and others right now, entitled Souls for the Taking, and have in the past published a mere short story on DM's Guild, All Things Through the Bright Flames. I collaborated on Game Source books, also available at the Guild, entitled The Border Kingdoms and Thay, Land of the Red Wizards, with Alex Kamer and Alan Patrick, and many other realms-related collaborations in the works. From new Volos guides to new regional source books, and intended to go on working on detailing the realms through various means for as long as I can. EMI, a controversial topic. Retcons in the Forgotten Realms and other settings. As the creator of Faerun, how do you feel about changes made by others, such as introducing entire cities of good drow with explanation, "They were always there," or similar retcons in other hobbies like Warhammer 40k's Adepta Custodes, shifting to multi-gender with "They were always there." Is there a good way to handle retcons? Perhaps through events? Hello? There it goes. And novels that alter the setting organically, or is a simple phrase like that sufficient? Unless new territory is being explored, or a magical or other barrier or deception removed to reveal things in a new light, the "was always there" is never a good design way to introduce or explain anything. And unless there are valid lack of time or word count or legal right reasons for explanations, it's always lazy design to do so. Give fans, gamers, readers an in-world reason or presentation for the retcon, even if it's something as clumsy as "when the moons come into conjunction, this entire species changes," or some BS, right? No, that makes sense. Like, don't just, "It's always been there, guys. You guys just suck and are dumb." Much better is to, as with the drow shift mentioned before, show the change happening or the revelation of why what we thought we knew up until now was wrong. And we should now see something differently. Change is never easy or accepted by everyone, but to not make that effort is, to me, just lazy design and disrespect for the audience and the creation you're working on. That is so true. I cannot stand when that fact is, just is said, like, "Oh, they've always been there." It's like, obviously they've always kind of been there, especially with the drow, right? They created Elistrea, but to say that the whole large civilization has been around, it feels, it is lazy. Even, I'm not even a writer, but it's like, just people see that and it's just like, it's unbelievable, right? It just feels bad. Like, it's a slap in the face to everyone's intelligence, right? So if you really want to make sweeping changes, just make it believable, right? Like, for the drow, for instance, something you could do, or something that you can say was like, well, more and more drow have started following Elastrea, and they're all kind of given paths towards each other and towards this new civilization that they started to create. A village turned into a town, turned into a city. That's the whole thing. Like, that would have been, oh man, that would have been a cool idea to kind of like look into. Man, what missed opportunity. What a hugely missed opportunity. And like the challenge, oh man, this story is just writing itself, right? Like the challenges that place could have against like the inherent racism, right, that they would have inflicted upon them, right? And then their struggle to, let's say, keep themselves from turning into like this weird haven of like, seedy people, because like, oh, this is where the downtrodden and stricken, socially stricken go to, and they're like, no, we're not being bad people here. That would be, oh man, what a miss to do that, instead of just saying, oh, they're all here. There could have been so much exploration of that idea. What a, man, it just feels bad, right? It's just such a missed opportunity. But let's move forward. Maybe we could kind of like want to, no, maybe not, it's too big. There we go. Close enough. We'll fill upwards. EMI. If you can go back in time and change any elements of the world you created, what would be the first thing you'd alter and why? Not having the World Mirror Edition changes in the game. What? Not have the World Mirror Edition changes in the game. That must be an error right there. I'm not exactly sure what's trying to be said. So, no time of troubles. Avoid having any gods on stage in person, as opposed to speaking in dreams or showing manifestation. And cut back drastically on realms-shattering events like the Spell Plague. Eradicate big change events first. No need for any of them until we've explored the entire world thoroughly in source books. We've only seen half of one continent. True. Absolutely true. Right? Like, this world is crazy this guy came up with. There's so much stuff. And we've only seen like half it, and they're like, oh, let's destroy all of the, realities of existence. Like, dog, like, chill. Beyond the Forgotten Realms, he created other works like the Band of Four series, Falconfar, and Castlemorn. Can you tell us about these non-realms projects and what inspired them? All of these projects are things I was asked to do, and all of them involve creating new worlds. I do lots of other game designs and fiction too. I recently wrote a novel for Fate of the Norns Vikings role-playing game entitled The One-Eyed King, and before that penned a folklore, the Affliction novel, and The Whispering Skull. And pen a folklore. Interesting. The Band of Four briefly explores a corner of Aglirta, the various baronies along a river. Castlemorn introduces us to an entire new world, one continent of some large offshore islands. And Falconfire looks at what happens if a fantasy writer's work creates or influences a fantasy setting that's connected to our modern world. And what happens when he finds himself suddenly plunged into that setting? The motherfucker just made himself an isekai. He's just like, I'm just gonna do an isekai. That's funny. I love to tell stories, and I love to create worlds, so when someone asks me to do those things, I leap at the chance if I possibly can. In all three cases, plus the fate of the Norns novels, friends asked me to create something, so I did, with glee. In every case, I went down to the human level of look over the shoulder of interesting characters as they live their lives and go along for the ride. I asked myself what they'd see and feel, and just wrote about it. What a freaking chat, dude! I can't stop saying that. Like, they're just like, hey, can you just write a whole ass book? And it's like, yeah, sure, why not? That's crazy. I never really followed like that deeply into this sort of stuff, but just like, God, just the amount of imagination that just overflows from this dude is bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Have you developed any new settings outside the Forgotten Realms in recent years? Would you be willing to create an entirely new world that could rival the scope and depth of Faerun? And what might that look like? Non-disclosure agreements prevent me from speaking freely about some settings I've created, developed, or am at work on. The short answer to both of your question here is yes. I created several settings and developed many more that were created by others. Right now, I'm detailing cities and Darren Drader's Daring and Dread campaign. Oh my god. Darren Drader's Daring and Dread campaign setting, and have finished work on environs of oh get guys and Gax from GUI Cube. Wow. If I was setting out to do brand new large scope setting, I'd want it to have different focus than the realms, like with magic working in different ways, and I think, for me, it's time to explore more intrigue and less fighting monsters for a bit. Ooh, excuse me. Looking back on your career, what has been the most rewarding aspect of sharing the Forgotten Realms with the world, and how has the community influenced your ongoing passion for it? The most rewarding aspect of sharing the realms with the world has been making friends among writers, gamers, artists, and other creative folks all over the world, and being invited to conventions to see a lot of the world too. I love the realms that fans have shown me, and their endless lore questions about the setting to try to make their games and fiction and imagining richer inspires me every day to go on working on the realms. It has truly become my life's work uh, that I'm happy to tackle every day until my last one. Thank you immensely, Mr. Greenwood, for joining us and offering such a profound insight into let's see here. Thank you immensely, Mr. Greenwood, for joining us and offering such profound insights into the Forgotten Realms and your creative journey. It's been an absolute honor to hear from the mind that brought so much wonder to life. Your stories continue to inspire and transport us. Before we conclude, could you share with our readers where they can purchase your books, such as Elemental Series or Death Mass, how they can stay updated on your future projects or connect with you? Ed Greenwood. The easiest way to get my Realm book and those with other publishers and settings I've mentioned here is through Amazon, in paper, Kindle book, ebook, or Audible audiobook formats. To reach me these days, the best way is to join my Patreon. I am Ed Greenwood there. Greenwood's Grotto on Discord. Oh, dude, I want to. Hell yeah. Or find my Realms lore videos on my YouTube channel. I also do the Mages and Sages podcast. I should follow all of these. We should all follow these. I can be seeing playing Elminster on the Six Sides of Gaming YouTube channel, or playing a Greyhawk mage, oh my god, Ravalantar, oh my god, these pronunciations are bonkers. Greyhawk mage, Ravalantar, on Lord Gosumba's J. Scott's Twitch TV channel, or guessing from time to time on his Gavin at Lord's Peak Twitch show. I usually write New Realms and Greyhawk lore for those appearances. Or see me in person at GaryCon in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in February, Gen Con in Indianapolis every July or August, and Gamehold Con in Madison, Wisconsin in October. I go to other cons like Phantasm in Peterborough, Ontario, Anime North in Toronto, Ontario, and Grand Con in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I can snatch the time. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the realms. May the realms be bright light in your life forever. The moon consort of inner peace. Man, what a great interview. What an amazing, good for them that they were able to get that interview. What great questions. I really enjoyed that. If you have any comments about it, please let me know. Alvin Irish Cream. I have walked many roads, but none quite like these. The mist here clings to the skin like cool silk, and the grass beneath my boots smells of sweet cream and wild honey. I came upon a small stone cottage nestled between two hills, its windows glowing with soft golden light. Gentle, luminous cane grazed in the meadows around it. The women who live here call themselves the Milk Mavens of the Golden Keen. They welcomed me without question. Over simple supper they spoke little, but their eyes held ancient knowing. It was the eldest among them, Grandmother Willowbow, who finally spoke to me alone by the hearth. She told me of the sacred milk of their herds and the golden toffee gems they craft from it. Then she leaned close and said, "Child of the trees, when the road grows long and your heart grows cold, remember this. Take the gems and melt them slowly into the thickest cream you can find. Let the mixture cool until it no longer steams. Then add the clear spirit of the mountain springs, enough to warm the blood, but not to burn the tongue. Bottle it, let it rest in the cold. It will taste of home, even when you are far from it." She gave me no written recipe, only these words, a small pouch of the gems to carry with me. Back at the Elven Maid Inn, I set to work at once. I chopped the crowing toffee gems and warmed 500 milliliters of the richest double cream over the lowest flame. I stirred until the gems surrendered. The cream turned into a smooth golden sauce. Then, impatient fool that I was, I added the vodka while it was still warm. The mixture split. I poured it anyways. I poured it away. Oh yeah, it curdled. The second attempt, I let the cream and toffee cool completely before adding 450 milliliters of good Starlight vodka. This time it held together. On the third try, I added a little powdered dream root dissolved in warm cream and a few drops of vanilla. The balance felt right. That's so cool. How they put a story to it. Oh my god. That's so good. Let's see, the golden toffee elixir of Crowin? Liquor of silken dreams. For approximately 1 to 1.2 liters. Unfortunate, it's in metric. Let's see here. 350 to 400 grams? Crowin toffee gems. Polish quick milk fudge candies chopped small. I'd have to look what that is. Okay, so you're gonna need toffee. 500 milliliters velvet double cream or heavy cream. So you'd probably need like heavy whipping cream out here for the States. 36% fat or higher. Jesus. 450 to 500 mils Starlight vodka. So we need like a neutral. Optional for deeper harmony. 1 to 2 teaspoons powdered dream root, instant coffee, dissolved into a splash of warm cream. A few drops of vanilla essence. Let's see here. Warm the double cream gently in a pot over low heat. Do not boil. Do not boil that. It'd probably burn it. Add the chopped gems a little at a time, stirring constantly until they melt completely into a smooth caramel color sauce. 8 to 12 minutes. Add a splash more cream if it becomes too thick. Remove from heat and cool completely to room temperature. This step is vital. Oh, you have to let it cool. Stir in the vodka, optional dream root and vanilla. Whisk well until smooth. Pour into clean bottles. Seal and rest in the cold cellar or icebox for at least 1 full day. Okay. We serve it well chilled in small goblets by the fire, or stirred into hot morning coffee for travelers who need courage for the road. A plate of extra Crowin toffee gems recited is traditional. Note on keeping. This elixir must live in the cold. Shake before pouring. It keeps well for perhaps a fortnight. I have learned not to make more than we can drink in that time. Note on replacements for the gems. Added later after speaking with a trader from Southern Realms. The true Crowin toffee gems cannot be found. A thick golden caramel made from slow-cooked milk works almost as well. Grandmother Willowbow once hinted at this herself. A thick golden caramel made from slow-cooked. Okay. Best replacements for Polish Kroki. What is Polish Kroki? Milk fudge candy. Use 300 to 400 grams of ready-made dulce de leche, thick caramel spread, often sold in jars or tins. Simply warm it gently with the double cream until smooth. Then continue exactly as written above. The result is remarkably close in color, sweetness, and creamy depth, or use craft caramel bits. Closing thought, 14th day of the moon, a silver mist. I'll still think of Grandmother Willowbow when I pour this for guests. One sip and even the most road-weary soul seems to sit a little straighter, as though remembering a home they had almost forgotten. The golden toffee elixir of Crowin now has a permanent place on the shelf behind the bar at the Ellen Maid Inn. It is not the strongest drink we serve, nor the most famous, but it may be one that feels most like a warm hand on the shoulder. I will keep her secret well. Man, that actually sounds really good. Polish Schroskis. Wonder what, let me see here. What else could you do? What is Polish? How do you spell that? Crocky. Oh man. What could you do? They said that you can do like a craft caramel bit. Let's take a look. So you would do... Oh, you'd have to melt them. Okay. Ready-made, don't you let your... You continue exactly, that's right. Let's see. Shoot the thick pulling caramel made from slow-cooked milk works also. Let's see. So you could use the craft caramel bits and then melt that. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. The unwritten story. Do we have time? We have... Oh, man. Yeah, we have time to read this. It's only one page long. The unwritten story. Why game masters are not storytellers. In every tabletop role-playing game, one figure stands at the corner of the experience. The Game Master. Whether called a Dungeon Master, Castle Keeper, or simply the GM, I prefer Dungeon Master. You are part of my dungeon, and I am the master of it. This individual designs the world, arbitrates its rules, and gives voice to its countless inhabitants. It is tempting to call them the storyteller. The label feels natural until one considers what storytelling actually requires. A traditional storyteller authors a complete narrative. They control the beginning, middle, and end, deliver it to the passive audience. The Game Master performs a different role entirely. They build the conditions under which a story can emerge, and step back and let it unfold through the choices of others. The GM's primary work is world building and facilitation. They draw maps, populate cities and wildernesses with NPCs, seed ancient mysteries and simmering conflicts, and prepare plot hooks like invitations left on a table. They embody every monster, merchant, and monarch the players encounter. They enforce rules with a consistency and creativity. And they react in real time when players make unexpected decisions. Yet they do not dictate the plot. When players ignore and carefully place hook, befriend the enemy, or wander into a side passage that leads nowhere important, the GM adapts the world around those choices rather than steering the group back into a predetermined path. This reactive stewardship is the heart of the role. The Game Masters provides the stage, the lighting, and the supporting cast. But the protagonists write their own scenes. A single player's decision to parlay instead of fight, to spare a creature that was meant to be an obstacle, or to pursue a personal goal no one at the table anticipated, can redirect an entire campaign. The resulting narrative is emergent, shaped by every participant in the moment. No one, including the GM, can reliably predict its middle or its end. The distinction carries real consequences for how the hobby is played. When GMs view themselves primarily as storytellers, they risk prioritizing their own narrative vision over player agency. Most vibrant sessions often occur when the GM yields a measure of control and allows the table's collective creativity to surprise everyone, including themselves. In these moments, the GM becomes less an author and more a host, a referee, a fellow traveler, and the keeper of a living world large enough to contain stories no single person could have written alone. A tabletop role-playing game is not a novel, a film, or even a video game with fixed branching paths. It is a shared act of imagination that belongs to everyone at the table. By relinquishing the title of storyteller, game masters can more fully embrace their actual power, the ability to build worlds rich and flexible enough for legends to arise that no one could have foreseen. So, yeah, I agree with this. Storytelling also it took a different turn than how I was expecting it to be, but yeah, overall I agree with this. But you got to remember, as a player, you are also part of this. You are also part of the story, and only a part, right? You are collaborating the story, so you're not trying. Maybe you shouldn't try to derail a story, whereas you should try to help promote the story moving forward or blossoming the story, right? And that's not to say to, be lol random or to play into like the story all of the time. Sometimes, most of the time, you should probably get into your character and be like, this is what the character should do. But be very careful with that too. That's a completely different subject on what my character would do. There's plenty of videos and sources about that and how toxic that could be. Remember, you are not the only person there. But yeah, generally overall agree with that. Sometimes DMs have to just let it happen. Available on all major podcast providers. Subscribe today and join Nerdcognito Nation. Nerdcognito. New episodes drop weekly on Tuesday. Arguably the largest audio-only podcast in our corner of the hobby. Neat. I did not know about this. I'm really glad I looked at this. There's a bunch of different things. Is this the story? So we're on page 23. That's a short story. We might not have time to get to that. So, unfortunately, we'll continue forward. Maybe we'll read it another day, but we'll continue forward. Maybe we'll get to some interviews. What is this? D&D Rules Cyclopedia, the definitive guide for every Dungeon Master. At last, the complete one-volume reference every serious player and Dungeon Master has been waiting for. Over 500 pages, damn! Packed with monsters, spells, magic items, traps, random tables, wilderness, desired dungeons, dungeon generation, and campaign advice compiled from years of actual play and organized for instant use at the table. No more hunting through multiple books mid-session. Everything you need is right here in D&D Rules Cyclopedia. Neat. I wonder if that's free. All you guys out there in video world, go ahead and use that QR code. I'll probably be using it later. Comment on what you think of this. To walk a road of ruin. Pulp Fiction adventure from A.G. Van Orden. Let's see. Let's look at this interview. Seems interesting. Interview with Elisa Hazel, an indie architect of Strange Worlds. Today I'm absolutely delighted to chat with Elisa Hazel, an incredibly talented independent writer and a dear friend of mine whose imaginative storytelling has always inspired me. Is a creative force behind gripping series like the Twitching Light trilogy and the Helios system, along with standalone gems such as Among the Juniper Trees and To Those Who Haunt You. Have I heard of that? I feel like I have. Anyways, Elisa Louise tells that blend horror, science fiction, and fantasy in ways that keep readers on the edge of their seats. Her passions for speculative fiction shines through every page, and I'm excited to dive deeper into her journey, her works, and her insights as indie author. Now let's get into the questions. Elven Maiden, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got started in writing? What sparked your passion for storytelling? Alyssa Hazel. I was an avid reader growing up, so I think after years of enjoying books, I wanted to create something like it in my own way. Elven Maiden. Where did your love for speculative fiction, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy genres come from? Was it a particular book, movie, or experience that ignited it? Elisa Hazel. My father and mother were well read, and they passed that on to me. One of the wrinkles that resulted, I was reading above grade level and lacked a challenge in what was available to me. So my dad, who didn't want to launch me into Stephen King in 3rd grade, introduced me to the classics. Howard, Lovecraft, Tolkien, Lewis, Christie, Doyle, Poe, Shelley, and so on. I, of course, also dug into R.L. Stine quite a bit. My mother studied a great deal of psychology and always had a number of books about the mind, development, etc. I think between those influences and a passion for forensics, I was drawn to the odd, the mercurial, and the morbid. Ellen Maiden, who are some of your favorite authors and books that have influenced your work? Are there any classics or modern titles that you keep coming back to? The 2 books I reread the most have to be Watership Down and Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. An odd combination, to be sure, but make what you will of it. Elven Maiden, as an accomplished young author who has published multiple books, including full series by your mid-20s, oh my god. How has your writing evolved over the years? I say it's definitely improved, insert laughter here. In all seriousness, I think the quality and quantity of work have been forced to improve with each book. You can be the greatest writer in the world, but if you don't start forcing yourself to sit down and get the work done, you won't have anything to show for it, and I am far from the greatest, at least right now. Consistent effort is slowly becoming my secret writing weapon as far as I'm concerned. What does a typical writing day look like for you? Do you have any rituals or habits that help you stay creative and productive? It's a bit chaotic at the moment. I still currently have side hustle. I'm the primary homemaker. We now have a rather energetic dog, pronounced dog. I'm expecting my first child in January of next year. Right now, it's do everything in the morning, eat lunch, then grind out as much writing as I can for around 3 hours until I have to make dinner. Then in the evenings, I write more. Staying productive is a byproduct or self-imposed deadlines. After all, when you're expecting a new kid in January, and you want to put all your attention on them as much as possible, getting the bulk of the work done for your next book is critical. Especially if you don't want the book out by February. It's not a glamorous answer, but it be what it be. I will say, some of my best illustration arrives when I'm on a treadmill. I set the belt to 5.5 miles per hour and let my brain float while my legs feel like they're dying. Works every time. Ugh, that sounds horrible. Do people, I can't believe people do that, but I can't believe people do that. That's crazy. Elven Made In. Have you ever played tabletop playing games like Dungeons and Dragons or others? If so, which ones are your favorites? Have I played? Yep. Castles and Crusades, D&D 5e, Savage World, Hero, Pathfinder, Hollow Earth Expeditions, the Star Wars RPG, Hyperbia, and more. I'd like to get back to Castle and Crusades or Hollow Earth, and I'm pretty much down for whatever is available. I currently live in a smaller town, so the options aren't super diverse, but I enjoy my home table. Oh, nice. How do you view the current TTRPG scene? Do you see any parallels between TTRPG storytelling and the way you craft narratives in your books? To quote Sebastian from The Little Mermaid, Ariel, the human world, it's a mess. Well, I will say there is a bit of improvement going on right now. I love that more and more indie projects are finally getting their time to shine. Honestly, I think closest parallel between systems and the way I write is that sci-fi series is fairly evocative of old school Traveler. Elven Made In. Let's talk about the Twitchlight trilogy. What inspired this horror series, and what themes do you explore in it? It was partly a collection of stories I'd written over college, and partially my realization that I, at the time, was not a particularly reliable and good person. Oh, Jesus. I remember asking myself early on in the writing process, if I were a mom, would I be a good one? I can answer no. Twitching Light was written over the course of all of this, plus COVID shutting the world down, and I'd like to think it carries themes of motherhood, depression, substance abuse, but also little wisps of hope things are going to get better. Elven Made In. The Twitching Light. In The Twitching Light, how did you approach building the eerie atmosphere and characters that challenge reality? Just tracking onto the answer above, during the time I was writing the first 3 books, I was also going through a health scare. My body was fighting Lyme's disease and co-infection called Bartonella. We figured all of this out because I was about to check myself into the psych ward. Not to make light of a situation that was frankly terrible then, but it wasn't hard to lose myself in writing those morbid sort of things. I'm a lot better now, and have scanned clear of those infections. At the same time, it's easy to remember what it was like to not have full use of my mind. I still get dreams on occasion that aren't particularly nice. That being said, I sounded enough like a tortured artist. Dreadful, really. Next question. Elven Made In. Moving to the Helios system series, starting with the third test, a science fiction thriller. What was the initial idea behind the sci-fi world? When I was 17, I traveled to China on a mission trip sponsored by my church. The goal was to teach English for a few weeks. I was one of the 3 Americans there at the time. I loved the experience. It wasn't without its hiccups. There was a sense of danger, especially when it was just us over there. And there was a sort of lonely isolation to the process. I wanted to tap into the feeling of travel, discovery, and isolation, and I figured science fiction was the best way to do it. Elven Made In. The second initiative is a sequel in the Helios system. How does it build on the third test, and what new elements did you introduce? Hazel. The most common note I received about the third test is wanting a larger expansion on the setting. So, this was a huge focus going into the second initiative. I gave an extensive look at Brescia, the correctional system on Cassian, gang activity on both, etc. I also wanted to give the reader a better understanding of dualistic religious system, the Church of Mitriana. Man, those are some words. Elven Maiden, among the juniper trees, seems to blend fantasy with elements like a crippled prince and a pilgrimage. Can you share what drew you to this story and its unique setting? I wasn't planning on writing a sequel to The Third Test initially, and I wanted to try out a different genre. Fantasy. High fantasy wasn't what I was drawn to, especially with my horror affliction. So my aim went to a Grimm's level low fantasy, integrating a somber, realistic tone with odd hints of magic. While Antigone was the first character conceived, I knew she wasn't meant to carry the story. Thus was born Prince Aemon Boone, a young man who was robbed of the use of his arms and leg during a plague 12 years ago. I've long been drawn to underdog leads who overcome the odds, and Aemon, who is not intended to be king until the death of his older brother, and is striving to become a man worthy of the throne despite how others perceived him, is a prime example of that. Interesting. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, just they came up with like a person. Let's see who was it? Yeah, Antigone. They came up with Antigone, and then it was like, nah, she's not that good, not good enough to carry a whole ass story. Elven Maiden. To Those Who Haunt You appears to delve into horror and odd tales. What makes this book stand out in your bibliography? And what was your favorite part to write? I wrote it entirely because of Larry Correia? Larry Correia. I'm assuming it's Correia. Short version of the story. I was invited to be the feature horror guest at a convention a few years ago. The theme, monsters. The guest of honor, Mr. Monster Hunter International himself, since there was a good chance we were going to be on a panel together. I knew I couldn't show up with only 4 books under my belt, so I wrote the book entirely over the course of October. Jesus! I wrote a whole ass book in October, in like 1 month, releasing it in time for their convention in January. Well, that's probably the most interesting part of the behind-the-scenes story. Whistling at Night is probably one of the best horror scene stories. You've recently mentioned a new book. Can you give us a teaser about what readers can expect? This next book is a conclusion to Among the Juniper Trees story. There's going to be a bit of a hammer horror gothic strand to this new tale, and I'm excited for you all to read it. Elven Maiden. Many of your books are now available as audiobooks, like To Those Who Haunt You and The Third Test. How has the transition to audio formats affected your storytelling approach? In previous books, I did a lot of internal dialogue, which doesn't translate as well to an audiobook format. Be more intentional about indicating when thoughts transition to spoken word and general prose. As an independent writer, what has been your overall experience self-publishing your books? What motivated you to go the indie route? Self-publishing is like running a small business. If anything goes wrong, it's your fault 99% of the time. I'm coping, I swear. Motivation-wise, that could be an entire video essay. That being said, it came down to creative control, royalty payments, and chances of success, and I figured I'd be better off with my writing future in my own hands. True. Take control of your own self if you possibly ever can. I know sometimes you can't. Most of the time you probably can't, but if you can just be indie, that's probably some of the best stuff. Elven Made In. What are some of the biggest hurdles you've faced as an indie author, such as editing, marketing, or distribution challenges? Hazel. Marketing is like wrestling an octopus. You have a high likelihood of failure, but you can get the upper hand. Distribution is entirely through Amazon and Barnes & Noble at the moment, but I'm mostly content with this side of the operation. Editing has been an odd sort of struggle between pricing, not getting scanned, and finding someone who fits your working style. It's difficult to find good help. Okay. Elven Made In, how do you promote your books? What strategies have worked best for you on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Threads? Memes work great on X. TikTok is like the modern art of marketing. If you can figure it out, you can make bank. But the average person just doesn't get it. I'm still cracking the code on Meta, so I'll get back to you. Yeah, Meta feels more like probably like the like normies, and normies are weird. You attended events or discussed your work at places like libraries. What tactics do you use at conventions, book signings, or in-person events to connect with readers? The greatest thing any author can do is stand up and make eye contact. It's gotten harder to do the more pregnant I've grown, but getting off your phone and being ready to actively engage with potential readers works wonders. Elven Made In terms of building your audience, how important has your website, author AlisaHazel.com, been? What other online tools to communicate do you leverage? The website tend to be a little out of date, mostly because I do most of my updates through social media. It works best as a landing pad for people to learn more, almost like an extended business card, especially since more of my sales are through Amazon, not through the site itself. Oh, neat. Elven Made In. Looking ahead, what are your future plans as a writer? Are there more books in existing series or new genres you're excited to explore? I currently have 3 projects lined up. Beyond the Juniper Trees, ETA February, a collection for Horde Wars, approximately late 2026, and a finale to my sci-fi trilogy in 2027. After that, I think I'd like to return to horror. I'm always my most energized when I get to dip into the genre, and I think I'm due for another round of spooks. Elven Made In. Finally, what advice would you give to aspiring writers, especially those considering the independent publishing path? Any key lessons from your journey? Hazel. Start with short stories to build your confidence. Try to write 300 words a day, even if it feels like nonsense, and don't become weighed down by your own expectations. Most authors don't start gaining traction until book 10. Which will happen for me after nearly 10 years of publishing. Enjoy the journey, sniff some roses, make friends, and write what energizes you. Elven Made In. Thank you so much, Elisa, for taking the time to join us and share your incredible journey on the writing. Your enthusiasm for crafting worlds full of mystery, thrills, and wonder is truly contagious, and it's been a joy hearing about your experiences and future plans. Before we wrap things up, could you tell our readers where they can purchase your books, including any preferred platforms for ebooks, paperbacks, or audiobooks? Also, how can they stay connected with you for updates on new releases and events? Thanks for asking. All of my books are currently available in paperback and ebook, with the Twitching Light Omnibus available in hardcover. If you're an audiobook fan, To Those Who Haunt You, the third test, and the second initiative are all available via audiobook. If you're looking to keep in touch, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads as author Lisa Hazel. And if you're here for memes as well, check out my X account at Elisa Hazel. I'm taking a bit of a hiatus from live events in early 2026 with the arrival of my first daughter. I should be back in the saddle by later in the year or early next. Just keep an eye out on my socials, and of course, thank you EMI for the interview. Yeah, I feel like giving birth is a good excuse. Yeah. This looks like a simple recipe. During one of my journeys through the Whispering Groves, I was welcomed to a spring blossom fest by the Elven Kin. Under flowering trees that glowed softly in the twilight, they served this delicate drink that tasted like morning dew kissed by the starlight and wildflowers. It was light, floral, and refreshing, the perfect sip after a long day of travel. I asked for the secret and brought it back to the Elven Maid Inn. Our guests now call it the Elven Dewdrop, and it has become a favorite for quiet evenings and celebrations of new beginnings. Oh yeah, this looks super easy. 60 mils of gin. So, was that half an ounce? Or is that a whole ounce? Let's see, and then elderflower. So 1/2 quarter. Double sparkling wine or soda, chilled. So fill a cocktail shaker with ice. Add the gin, elderflower, liqueur, and lemon juice. Shake well for 10 to 15 seconds until well chilled. Strain into a chilled flute, cup, or tall glass. Top gently with sparkling wine or soda water. Interesting. Garnish with lemon twist and edible flowers. Served well chilled. Perfect as a welcome drink for a lighter moments at the end. Sura Miyuki, keep it the Elven Maid Inn. These are cool. I wonder where they get all of these, like... This is such a cool idea. Adventurers Guild. You stayed at the inn, now it's time to venture out there. Adventurers Guild is a free-to-read fantasy adventure webcomic series which is stylized like a classic role-playing video game. Join half-elf Klaus Warrington and his party of adventurers in fighting thieves, investigating hauntings, saving the helpless, figuring out magic, and lending a hand when things get more personal. Let's see, what do we want to read? We've always split the party. I want to see. Let's read this, and this will probably be the last thing. Well, let's go back. Table contents. I kind of want to read this. Let's see what else. If there's anything else. Limit crossword. Orcish blood. Story to keep to yourself. The real purpose of backstory. Angels in the Arrow Road. Dwarven Ember, unleash your imagination forgotten art of dungeon mastery. We might need a part 2 on this. because there's so much here. I thought this was gonna be like a small like little newsletter or whatever. This is like a whole thing. No Heroes Without Horrors, To Best Glory, short story, let's say Defensive Monsters, PC, Artist of Survival Traps. Start narrating worlds, Secret of Living Worlds, Triad's Blood, parody, article. Yeah, so maybe we'll probably do a part 2. Because there's just so much. BTA to keep on the Borderlands. Alright, so that's a review. Double standing is a cultural gatekeeping. I wanted to go over that. Yeah, definitely gonna have to do a part 2. So let's do this. This is only what, 4 pages, and I think we'll call it there. We've always split the party by Ryan David of Nerdcognito. Oh shit. Yeah, these are some big names. That's so crazy. Hey everyone. Let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons, the game that's been sparking epic adventures and heated arguments for over 50 years. You gather your friends, roll some dice, and dive into a world of dragons and wizards. Sounds like a blast, no? But here's the thing, D&D has this knack for dividing its fans just as much as it brings them together. Whether it's players bickering over rules or whole communities splitting over new additions, the hobby's got a history of drama that could rival any campaign's plot twist. You know I always have thoughts, and here they are on why D&D keeps fracturing the base. We will be digging into the player fights, creators clashes, and corporate moves that have shaped the game through its wild ride. We'll look at the social stuff, edition wars, and big shifts that keep D&D table feeling like a battlefield sometimes. I split D&D's history into 4 eras to make sense of it all. The Golden Era, 1974 to 1990, is when the game was born with original D&D, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and yes, even the launch of 2nd edition. The formative period when it grew from niche hobby to a cultural juggernaut. The Dark Era, 1990 to 2000, was a rough one, with TSR, the company behind D&D, stumbling and the hobby losing its shine. The D20 Era, 2000 to 2014, covers 3rd edition, 3.5, and the 4th edition, a period of huge growth but also some nasty rivalries. In the modern era, 2014 to present, is all about 5th edition and its 2024 updates, where D&D is bigger than ever. Where D&D's bigger than ever persona still trips over issues like licensing and inclusivity. Each era has its own flavor of chaos. This actually seems like a good read. The Fractured Realms, division through the eras. Back in the Golden Era, from 1974 to 1990, D&D was the shiny new toy that had everyone buzzing. Gary Gygax and Dave Anderson kicked it off with original D&D, pulling in wargamers and college kids who were stoked to create their own fantasy worlds. But even in those early days, things started to splinter. In 1977, TSR dropped basic D&D for beginners and advanced D&D for diehards who wanted gritty, pronounced play. Suddenly, you had groups arguing over which was the real D&D, with some swearing by simple dungeon hacks and others geeking out over AD&D's complex charts. Players started tweaking rules to fit their tables, which was cool, but meant every group was playing a slightly different game. Then there was the satanic panic in the 80s when worried parents and TV preachers decided D&D was basically a gateway to devil worship. This sounds nuts now, but it put gamers on edge and really impacted lives and psyches. Some groups got defensive, debating how to convince people the game wasn't evil, while others leaned into the edgy vibe just to mess with critics. Behind the scenes, Gygax and Anderson were squabbling over who deserved the crown for D&D's success, and fans started picking sides in fanzines and at cons. By the time 2nd edition hit in 1989, Community was growing, but those early fights about rules and the game's reputation were already carving out little factions, like adventurers splitting up to explore different dungeon paths. Still, the Golden Era had a kind of magic that kept things mostly together. The game was fresh in settings like Dragonlance, uh, where was I? Settings like Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms gave players shared stories to geek out over. Sure, there were debates, but excitement of this new hobby kept most folks on the same page. Those early divides, though, over editions and how to deal with outside world's judgment were like warning shots for the bigger battles to come. The Dark Era from 1990 to 2000 is when things got rough. TSR went wild, cranking out campaign settings like Dark Sun, Planescape, and Al-Qadim, trying to hook every kind of player. Problem was, nobody had their wherewithal to buy it all. So you'd have a Forgotten Realms fans butting heads with Planescape nerds, which setting was their heart of D&D. It split the community into camps, and some players just bailed for other games like Vampire the Masquerade or Werewolf the Apocalypse, which were all the rage with its dark, story-driven vibe. The flood of books was overwhelming, and it felt like you needed a second job just to keep up. Let's see here. That's... Oh, wow. Never really knew about the... Or I didn't really think that it would have separated the community that much. I would have expected that people would buy them just like nowadays. Like, it's not that big of a... I didn't expect it to be that big of a thing. Like, oh, this is the real D&D setting. Because they were just... Because D&D was mostly what? A rule set? No, they had Greyhawk, right? They must have had Greyhawk. So... Yeah, I'm just surprised it split the community that much. The satanic panic was lingering too, making players feel like they had to defend their hobby at every turn. Some argued whether to dial back the demonic stuff in the game to avoid more heat, which led to tensions at the table. Meanwhile, TSR was a mess inside, with big names like Gygax long gone and fights with authors like R.A. Salvatore spilling into fan newsletter and early internet forums. They're fighting with R.A. Salvatore? I wonder what that fight was. By 1997, TSR was Skinflint. Wizards of the Coast acquired the IP and assumed control over remaining TSR projects. The community felt like a guild that lost its leader, with players either clinging to their old 2nd edition books or jumping to other systems, making it tough to find a shared vibe. What made the Dark Era tough wasn't just the rules or settings. The hobby wasn't pulling in many new players, thanks to its bad rep and TSR's fumbles. So you had small, stubborn groups holding on to their version of D&D like it was a last potion in the bag. One table might be deep into a 2nd edition campaign, while another was already playing something totally different. It was like the game was barely holding on, and that made everyone a bit more territorial about their corner of the hobby. The D20 era from 2000 to 2014 started with a bang when 3rd edition dropped in 2000. The D20 system was a slick, unified way to play an open game license let other companies churn out D&D compatible stuff. For more than a minute, it was awesome. Players were swapping character concepts on forums and trying out new games built on the D20 rules. But then 3.5 came out in 2003, tweaking things while making older books feel useless. Fans were mad, feeling like they'd been suckered into buying new stuff, and online arguments got heated with 3.0 holdouts and 3.5 fans throwing shade at each other. Yeah, I came in uh at the end of this, right? I remember hearing things and people not liking the idea of having so many books and power creep and yeah, and then people were split. They wanted better storytelling. They didn't want as much fighting. Uh yeah, the community was the community didn't know what it wanted. Although I barely know that much because again I just barely came in. I remember fourth edition, a buddy of mine saying, "Hey, fourth edition is going to be coming out. Maybe we should try it out for ourselves," because we were being hosted by a buddy of ours' older brother. Because always wanted to play D&D. I was like, guys, I want to play D&D. Does anyone know how? And then my buddy's like, oh, my brother is willing to, DM for us just to check it out. Story for another time. Onward. Then came 4th edition in 2008, and oh boy, did that stir things up. It went all in on tactical combat, feeling like a tabletop video game. And a lot of players who loved the storytelling side of D&D weren't having it. The internet exploded with Edition Wars, where 4E fans were called sellouts and 3.5 loyalists were mocked and stuck in the past. Paizo jumped in with Pathfinder in 2009, their enhanced version of 3.5, and by 2011 it was outselling D&D. Fans picked sides like it was a blood feud. Meanwhile, the old school Renaissance crowd started digging up the simple rules from the 70s and 80s, calling newer editions bloated. Yeah, I remember this. I remember sticking with 4th edition though. Um, I think that was for the best because Pathfinder is really rough for newer players. There's a lot of stuff in there. So this edition, even though a lot of people don't like it, was probably the fairest edition. It was probably the most what's the word? Equal in all of the editions. So it didn't make any one class feel more overpowered. And there was a lot of different classes. I really enjoyed the class diversity and how like the concept of the class was very understood. It didn't step on each other's toes too much, which was unfortunate because they didn't bring back a lot of the classes. If I remember right, they didn't bring back they brought back ideas, but the class concepts kind of ran away for just more simpler, like these are like classes and then these are subclasses. Let's see. We'll go back. The D20's era fights weren't just about rules, they got personal. Online forums let people hide behind screen names, so arguments turned mean fast, with players slinging insults over playstyles or even accusing each other of gatekeeping the hobby. It was a weird mix of growth and chaos. The community was bigger than ever, but it was also split into factions that barely talked to each other. Everyone was so sure their version of D&D was the right one. It was likely trying to get a party to agree on a quest when half of them want to fight, the other half want to talk their way out. The modern era. Starting with 5th edition in 2014, brought D&D back to the mainstream limelight. It was easier to pick up than 4th edition, welcomed new players, and got a godly boost from shows like Critical Role and platforms like Roll20. The community now highlights its omnipresent diversity. There was a protracted effort to make the game present as hyper-inclusive. Sensitivity consultants were paid to clean up myths of stereotypes in the lore. This wedged out classic gamers who knew that all along, inclusivity and acceptance were baked into the game. They felt as if politics and pandering trumped polimes and potions. And then Wizards tried to overhaul the OGL, making the license stricter and threatening small creators' ability to monetize their work. Fans went nuts and partially united. 88% in polls said they hated it and felt like betrayal. Some folks started looking at other systems, returning to Pathfinder, or now looking to Daggerheart. Some retreated back to the OSR for refuge. Yeah. This debacle, you can still feel now. I wish they put like what year this whole thing took place in. I don't remember. It was a couple years ago. But you can still feel it in the community. People are, that's why there's so many ideas like to just make your own system nowadays because of the OGL and smaller creators. Yeah, that was not good for them. Social media made it easier to connect, but also kept the old edition wars alive. You'd see 5e fans arguing with OSR purists or Pathfinder players. With youth comes exuberance, and sometimes it gets way too heated. People act as if they are defending their honor instead of just talking about a game. Folks rehash old heat and save screenshots of gotcha moments for years to use at just the right time. Online battlegrounds have become cultural graveyards, and lack of sanity, humor, and hubris is omnipresent. At the table, problem players arguing over rules or derailing stories became a bigger deal, and DMs had to play peacemaker. 2024 updates to 5e tried to keep things compatible but caught flack for not fixing broken elements or correcting the errors identified by all in the past, like overpowered spellcasters. D&D is huge now, with more players playing now more than ever. But do they really play? Should I even ask the question, or will it span a 7-day rage bender of tags and receipts on X? The hobby still has got that knack for sparking fights over what the game should be. Bridging the divide, a call to roll together. Getting the whole D&D hobby, community, and all players in between to hold hands and sing around a campfire is probably a lost cause. Like trying to charm a Tarrasque with the loot. The game's history is littered with fights, from the Golden Era's edition debates to the modern era's online drama. Players are passionate, and that passion makes them dig in their heels concerning rules, settings, or what D&D should stand for. With so many systems out there, from Pathfinder to classic gaming indies, communities are spread across the internet wasteland. A unified D&D fan base feels like a long shot. Everyone's got their own table, and they're not always inviting others to sit down. But here's the deal. Every D&D player, whether they're flipping through 5e book or clutching an AD&D manual, loves this game for the stories and the fun. That's the spark we need to focus on. Instead of arguing over who's playing right, try running a one-shot with a different system, or just listening to why someone loves their weird OSR homebrew. At the table, use stuff like common sense instead of session 0 to make sure everyone's vibe matches. Online, maybe skip the snarky reply and share a cool campaign idea instead. We might not get one big happy D&D family, but we can make the divide smaller by remembering where we roll dice in the first place. To have a good time. what an actual, like, cool and collected way to go about this. I really appreciate them trying to keep it together. Not mention the culture wars too much, because right now there's a lot of culture war drama happening within D&D because of the inclusivity, or the stance on inclusivity, and like really pushing that narrative. So it's appreciative, and also kind of surprising that they didn't push into that as much. I might look into Nerd Cognito. It is a podcast. So yeah, if you know anything about Nerd Cognito, let me know about it. Go ahead and make a comment about it, because I don't know anything about this. Yeah, that's a lot lighter than I was expecting. But yeah, there's a lot of this fighting right now that being online kind of enables. But with that being said, I think that's going to be it for now. Hope everyone had a good time with this little preview. Probably going to do a part 2. But if you like what you see, go ahead, go follow Ellen Made In on Twitter, or X if you'd like to call it, and then look for Tales from the Tavern magazine. Should be up soon in August. So I highly recommend it. I'm going to buy one. And thank you, Elvin Made In, for giving me this for free. Really appreciate it. Everyone else, have a good time. And stay safe out there. Goodbye.